The second substitute is before us. Senator Wilson to the substituted bill.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. The second substitute basically just provides the state treasurer voting records upon request is what the difference was. So, Mr. Chair, we have been working and are working to protect Utah's investments from subjective standards, including environmental, social, and corporate governance. In Utah, we want to ensure that government investment decisions focus on maximizing the highest rate of return. We don't want to politicize investments to favor ideology rather than get the best returns on their money. ESG is threatening the American economy, individual economic freedom, and our way of life. ESG is an attempt to bypass democracy and transform capitalism to some ideological agenda. Utahns invest their hard-earned money with the desire to maximize profit and have a secure financial future. The state should invest funds with an even higher level of care. ESG practices are costly to everyday consumers. ESG investors generally end up paying higher costs for worse performance. An article from the Harvard Business Review article found that ESG investing policies have worse rates of return. UCLA and NYU study found that over the past 5 years, ESG funds underperformed the broader market, averaging a 6.3% return compared to an 8.9% return. Millions of retirement funds have been negatively affected by our current economy. President Biden's recent ESG rule would further hurt retirement funds. The ESG rule would force fiduciaries to use American funds to advance social causes and companies instead of focusing on investing to get the best return possible. Utahns deserve better than that. Recently, Senator Mitt Romney quoted, has said on his website, "Hundreds of millions of Americans' retirement funds have taken a hit in our current economy. The Biden administration's recent ESG rule would pose further risk to those retirement funds by forcing fiduciaries to use Americans' hard-earned money to advance social causes rather than investing to get the best returns. Americans' retirement is not something to play political games with," unquote. ESG tries to inject political ideology into investment decisions. Utah is taking a proactive step to protect Utah's investments and freedom of speech. 25 states, including Utah, have filed a lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Labor over a rule change allowing 401k managers to consider climate change and other environmental, social, and governance factors, or ESG, when choosing investments. Mr. Chair, SB 96, second sub, requires public treasurers in state and local governments, the URS board, and My 529 to make investment decisions with the sole purpose of maximizing risk-adjusted returns on investments. Retain the right to vote investor proxies if possible and ensure proxy voting complies with the principle of maximizing risk-adjusted returns on investment. They must make proxy voting records available to the state treasurer. It prohibits public treasurers, the URS board and My 529, from investing using ESG standards that lower or equate the principle of maximizing risk-adjusted returns on investments. It will require all publicly managed funds and My 529 to comply with the prudent investor rule. In 2004, Utah adopted a uniform law known as the Prudent Investor Rule. It outlines that when managing the assets of another person, a fiduciary should verify facts, diversify investments, consider the totality of economic conditions and circumstances, be transparent, have integrity, etc. A trustee who invests and manages trust assets owes a duty to the beneficiaries of the trust to comply with the prudent investor rule set forth in this chapter. If a trustee is named on the basis of a trustee's representations of special skills or expertise, the trustee has a duty to use those special skills or expertise. We want our state and local employees to have a strong retirement that they can count on. We are going to make certain that state funds are managed by prioritizing the highest return on investment as our retirees and taxpayers expect. Mr. Chair, if you'd allow, I'd like to have Treasurer Marla Oaks be part of my
Please,
presentation.
as part of your presentation, please go ahead, Treasurer.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Wilson and Senator Sandall. It is my pleasure to join you today to discuss an issue about which I feel very strongly, and it is really the politicization of our capital markets, which I believe poses a threat to all of us as Americans. As I tell people where I speak, I believe this is a nonpartisan or a bipartisan issue. If you care about the United States of America, if you care about our free market capitalist system, you will be against this politicization of the capital markets. A recent poll that I saw of 1,000 people randomly selected, 76% of Democrats and 78% of Republicans do not want business politicized. We have political bodies that address our social issues, and that includes bodies like this and Congress. We have these bodies to address important societal issues. It is not appropriate to use businesses to drive politics. Businesses have always been involved in politics, but in the past, they have respected the political institutions by backing different candidates and lobbying efforts. Now we are seeing a change to that, and that is happening largely through the proxy voting process. This is a very esoteric part of the market, but it's a very important part of the market, and I am happy to see SB 96, a bill that addresses this here in our state to prevent the politicization of the proxy voting process and to ensure that our investments are invested in the best interest of the beneficiaries. And thankfully, in our state, I think we are continue to hold strong to a traditional standard, fiduciary standard, which puts our beneficiaries first and foremost. And we are not politicizing that. We want to ensure that that continues. And so this is a very important bill, SB 96, to address these issues. So with that, I'll
Thank you, Senator Wilson.
And-
Does that include your presentation?
That does, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll bring it back to the questions. Senator Colomore.
Thank you. And just either for the Senator or Treasurer Oaks, this bill only directs treasurers of public entities to make their investment decisions apolitical and based on the usual and basic business principles. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So this is not a directive to any private organizations or entities outside of government.
No. Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other light. Oh, excuse me, Senator Bluen.
Thank you. Is there any interference here with I'm not really familiar with the proxy voting. How does that work? Are we, stepping on any federal boundaries that we're going to get in trouble for lack of better words?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to have an expert in that. Treasurer Oaks answer that.
Yeah, so investors have the right to these, and it's an important right to ensure that those proxies are voted in a way that's consistent with the fiduciary standard. And so this simply follows what's already in law. And so, no, we would not be running up against anything.
Any follow-up? No, it's okay. Senator Weiler, I saw your hand up, and then we'll go to Senator Kwan. Senator Weiler?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering if it's appropriate, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering, I know that our Treasurer Oaks has a tremendous amount of experience with institutional investing. I'm wondering how long has ESG been around and where did it start?
Thank you. Go ahead, Treasurer.
Thank you. So if we think about values-based investment strategies, historically, we've had socially responsible investing. That's been around for centuries. ESG is an outgrowth of socially responsible investing, and the term first appeared in a UN document. That's the first time that I've seen it, back in 2004. So it's a relatively recent phenomenon, and it's really picked up momentum, I would say, in the last 5 to 10 years. So it's relatively new. It is different from socially responsible investing in a very important way. That, as a socially responsible investor, I have value. My values. I want my values reflected in my investment portfolio, and therefore I will avoid certain companies to invest in. ESG engages with companies and changes them and impacts everybody in the marketplace. The only way that ESG is successful is to drive as many people to adopt the same viewpoint. And so it's very different from socially responsible investing that does not have an agenda to, or a goal to reach. ESG has goals to reach and therefore has to get as much money around those same goals. And so it fundamentally changes the marketplace. And that's
Thank you. Any follow-up, Senator Weiler?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Senator Kwan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll, if that's okay.
That's fine.
The first one has to do with, well, we have, I think it's no question about the big issues that we have with the environment here with the Great Salt Lake and with air quality and so many other issues. I'm wondering if this will negatively impact companies that already are promoting ethical and socially conscious, themes. So that's my first question.
Senator Wilson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to have Treasurer Oaks answer that.
so just to make sure I understand, is the question related to impacts on companies that might be, right? So, so this does not impact companies who are focused on, sorry, I'm getting confused with 97. We're talking about 96 is really a fiduciary duty for investment portfolios. So it's really doesn't have an impact
Could
here.
impact the companies directly, and so my second question probably will have the same question. Is it going to impact consumers or residents who might want to invest with companies in that way?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Senator Kwan, are you done with your questions?
I am, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Let's go to the public. Who would like to speak to this bill from the public? Show of hands. Arousing none. We'll bring it back to the committee for further consideration.
I was ready to move out, sorry.
What's that?
I was ready to move, so I'll stay here. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just appreciate,
Senator, we're not in summation yet. We don't have a motion.
oh, okay.
Went to public
summation.
comment?
Yeah, no, I'd like to summation, just thank Treasurer Oaks.
We'll do that. Right now, we went to the public here in the room. I've got to go to public online, but there are none. So now I'm going to bring it back to the committee for further consideration. Then you'll have your opportunity. Okay, sorry.
I thought you were through that.
Okay. Senator Cullimore.
Thank you, Chair. I will make the motion that we favorably recommend to Senate Bill 96.
Okay, discussion to that motion. I don't see any lights. Now, Senator Wilson, the floor is yours for summation.
Thank you, I'll waive.
Okay. Senator Cullimore for summation.
I'll waive as well.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Let's go to roll call vote. Let me turn it on, Nancy. There you go.
Senator Blumen? Cullimore?
Aye.
Kwan? Sandal? Weiler?
Aye.
Chair Bramble?
Aye. The bill passes 4-2. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
4-2 vote.
Appreciate that. Thank you for hurrying over here, Mr. Chair.
Next bill, Senate Bill 97, Public Contract Requirements. Senator Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a substitute. We need to adopt B97, if you'd like to do that.
Yeah, Senator Sandel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move that we delete and title and body Senate Bill 97 and replace it with second substitute Senate Bill 97.
Discussion to that motion. Senator, do you want to tell us the bare essence of the second sub?
Yes, I will, Mr. Chair. This second company to notify the public entity when the public entity begins engaging in an economic boycott and provides that the notice may be grounds for termination. And companies that engage in an economic boycott to comply with federal law. It includes language prohibiting a person from penalizing a company that agrees not to engage in an economic boycott and provides that doing so is a violation of the state's ability to run its own commercial relations and programs. That's what the second substitute is.
Okay. Discussion to the motion. Seeing no lights, I'll place it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The bill is substituted. Senator Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate that. Pretty well my comments from SB 96, second substitute, all apply in this second substitute Senate Bill 97, so I will not reread all those comments. SB 97, second substitute, we've been working for a number of months with all stakeholders, and we feel we've created a bill that we can all live with. I think it's a compromise bill, not a compromise bill. Requires all contracts the state or the local government issue not to engage in business that engage in economic boycott actions. In 2021, Utah enacted a law that said companies that do business with Utah or public entities cannot engage in boycotting Israel. SB would operate under the same set of standards and requirements. It also makes it so the companies the state or local government contracts with commits to not engage in a boycott of companies related to fossil fuels, timber, mining, agriculture, or firearms. Have policies that require employment, corporate board, compensation, or disclosure criteria related to race, color, sex, religion, ancestry, or national origin. Not committed to environmental standards or greenhouse gas emission standards beyond those required by law. If the company engages in these behaviors after contracting with the state or local government, it is grounds to terminate that contract. There is an exception in the bill, if needed, if there is no other economically viable way to acquire a good or service to meet legal financial obligations, then this will be waived in those circumstances. Again, Mr. Chair, I'd like to bring Treasurer Marla Oakes on part of my presentation.
Treasurer Oakes, welcome.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Bramble, and thank you, Senator Wilson, for the opportunity to speak to SB 97, second substitute. So in addition to the fiduciary standards that we spoke about in the previous bill, the changing of the capital markets is happening through an activist mechanism. Traditionally in our system, our economic system, we allocate capital based on economic factors. And unfortunately, there are now large companies, banks, insurance, and other financial institutions that have signed on to net zero climate pledges, which impacts traditional energy, for example, and impacts the markets and how capital is allocated. Because of these coercive tactics, capital is not going to where it would normally go. In this case, to profitable oil and gas projects. So in 2015, 59 oil and gas funds were raised globally, representing $46.6 billion. In 2021, 11 funds were raised, totaling $4.6 billion, a drop of 90%, despite improving economics. And this has contributed to the gas prices that we've seen over the last year and a half to 2 years because of insufficient supply and inflation that has spread across the country as a result. So unfortunately, the Americans who can least afford it are bearing the greatest burden with these tactics. And traditional energy plays an important role here in Utah's economy, particularly in rural Utah. Cutting off financing for businesses engaged in economically essential activities to advance a social agenda destroys livelihoods, increase costs, and does little to advance the desire we all have to breathe cleaner air and improve the environment. Punishing these entities is antithetical to our nation's capitalist system that has developed some of the greatest innovations in human history. And 2008 and 2009 is another example of what happens when we distort capital markets in the name of social justice and wanting people to own homes. Too much capital went into the housing market. The result was inflated housing prices and a crash that almost brought the entire system down. This is a serious problem when you begin to manipulate markets. In this case, this bill outlines the state of Utah's obligations as a participant in the marketplace and tries to address this issue through a market-based mechanism, and that is if we choose as a state how we will operate in the capital markets, and we do not want to do business with entities that may be harming us as a state. And so that's really the kind of the crux of this SB 97.
You know, it appears from your testimony that this is very similar to a state of California decided that they would boycott any other state that passed policies that they didn't like. And this weaponizing of markets, weaponizing of activities because of disagreeing on a political ideology seems to be out of control in the country right now. Would you agree?
I would very much agree with that, and I think it should concern all of us. It does not matter where you are in the political spectrum. We should not want this way of settling our differences.
In other words, the end shouldn't justify the means.
Correct.
Does that conclude your presentation?
It does, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Let's bring it to the committee for clarifying questions. Senator Kwan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Same question as before. Does this impact any company that already has policies or beliefs that fall in line with social or environmental impacts?
Yeah. So as long as they are not, as long as that company is not actively trying to harm another entity. So the problem that we have is particularly in the financial services industry, where a financial services company may decide not to provide capital to a business because they don't like the underlying business or, for some ideological reason. So no, it would not harm companies like what you're talking about.
That already have a belief system. It will not prohibit them from having a contract.
Right. So as long as they are not taking that belief system and trying to harm another entity by withholding capital or for ideological reasons, right? If they have a business reason, for example, a bank saying, well, it's, we're not involved in oil exploration, right? That is a risk-based decision, then that's ordinary business purpose. If they are withholding capital because they've signed on to a net zero climate pledge and they're trying to drive a political agenda with their capital, then that's where this would impact that.
A follow-up, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So if, let's say, a city wants to contract with a solar panel business, and so it is environmental, right? There's beliefs there, a belief system, and they don't want to contract with anyone else, right? With other non-solar panel type energy producers. Could that city be sued?
No. No, this is really aimed at at institutions that are weaponizing their business.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Oakes, back in the 40s and 50s, we saw weaponizing of financial institutions against certain demographics. This is just a variation on what we have rejected as a nation for now better than 60, 70 years. They used to call that redlining. We didn't like particular people, so banks refused to loan money. That's no different than today, banks having a different ideology, saying we're going to weaponize access to capital if we don't like your ideology. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you. I see no other lights. Who in the public would like to speak to this? Come on up. Mr. Simpson, would you come up at the same time? I'd like to see the banks and credit unions at the table at the same time.
Document.
Gentlemen, I do want you to know that we pulled Senate Bill 177 off the agenda, okay?
Thank you. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, my name is Howard Headley. I'm the president of the Utah Bankers Association. I just simply wanted to come forward and thank Senator Wilson for his leadership on this bill and Treasurer Oakes. We have worked for hours and months and weeks and spent a lot of time trying to refine this, and I just want to appreciate all their time and effort in listening to the concerns that we have. We too are concerned, Mr. Chairman, with what you're talking about, the weaponization, the political weaponization of so much in our society today, including the banking industry. We just like to be banks. We like to do what banks do, and to the extent that this bill moves us in that direction, we wanted to be helpful. We've raised a number of issues that we believe could have created technical issues, and again, Senator Wilson was great to work with and helped us get those issues resolved. We had a great meeting yesterday, and you're seeing a lot of the language from that meeting, and we're still digesting some of the placement of some of that language. But other than that, I just really want to step forward and thank Senator Wilson for his leadership. So,
Thank you, Mr. Simpson.
Similar sentiment that's been described by Mr. Headley from the Credit Union Association. We wish we were in a position to be agnostic as it relates to the issues that have been pulled in to these debates. But we thrive on certainty, and we worry that the solutions here could create more uncertainty, or as much uncertainty for us in the future. We too appreciate all of the work the sponsor and other members have given to this, and congratulate Senator Wilson on bringing banks and credit unions together before this committee. We're grateful for that.
Next it's going to be dogs and cats, sleeping together. I don't know what's happening to our world.
Sign of the times. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else in the audience like to speak to this? Welcome.
Gail Rizika with Utah Eagle Farm, and I too would like to say thank you to the sponsor and to our state treasurer for this bill and for this attention that this has brought. For several years now, this conversation has been going on. When we first started talking about this, the reaction was, you're crazy. There was really a negative reaction to this. Now people know, and they want to do something, and I am grateful, just as a citizen of the state of Utah, to know that our treasurer recognizes this. He's started doing something about it long before we were even sitting in these committees, as have others come forward and talked about this and the importance of this, because we all care about this, and we care about what happens in the state as the state stands up to these social kinds of issues through business that affects all of us. What happens in the state and we need to see more, but now move forward into the private sector so that we all can say, no, this is not what we want. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no hands online, well, one final call. Oh, we do have one hand online. Norma Wills. Norma, can you unmute yourself? There you go.
Yes, I did. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and after Norma's, we'll bring it back to the committee for further consideration. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Norma Wills, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Utah. Our organization is nonpartisan and issue-oriented. We study matters of public policy and develop positions on those issues. Our positions on reducing harmful greenhouse gas emissions by transitioning to carbon-free energy sources and improving air quality underlie our opposition to this bill. Financial institutions that take long-term climate effects into consideration in evaluating financial decisions should not be penalized for doing so. It seems counterproductive to prohibit state departments and divisions, such as the Department of Environmental Quality's Division of Air Quality, from doing business with financial institutions that support their objectives. The same rationale applies to cities and towns that have committed to clean energy goals. The Utah Office of Energy Development website contains the following statement. Utah is committed to supporting an environmentally responsible energy future through a strong and sensible mining program for critical minerals, investment in emerging energy technology, and air quality research and incentive programs. If we are truly committed to an environmentally responsible energy future, we should not preclude public entities from engaging with financial institutions that support the same goal. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you for your comments. Bring it back to the committee. Senator Sandel.
Thank you. I would make a motion that we committee second substitute Senate Bill 97, and just a bit of an add, if I can, Mr. Chair, in that motion. We realize that the state legislature has had a great deal of interest in this over the past summer. We had over 37 individual bill files that were filed to begin with that had something to do with ESG. Through the good work of some individual sponsors, we've narrowed most of those down into 4 bill files, 2 of which we have heard today and 2 that will start from the House side. I think this is a good space. I think what we're doing is measured. I think it's important. I think it's very healthy for our business environment as we continue to grow our state. And I appreciate the good work that those who have consolidated these bill files have put into this in this effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion to the motion. I'm going to make a comment on the motion. A few years ago, the administration tried to shut down all Second Amendment transactions by weaponizing the FDIC, saying any bank that entered into a transaction that dealt with ammunition, firearms of any kind, those banks were being sanctioned and being shut down. Congress came in and it was bipartisan and said, we're not going to weaponize our financial markets. Okay, that's what this bill does. Roll call vote. Well, let me go back to the sponsor for summation.
I would like to say, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. First of all, I really want to appreciate Treasurer Oaks and all his hard work. This has really been a huge effort. His staff, Brittany, have done a lot of work on this, and I appreciate them. Also want to shout out to Senator Sandel, who's helped tremendously in this space. Also, Senator Colmore yesterday was able to bring a number of stakeholders together and finally hammer out this last sub. And again, also to you, Mr. Chair, thank you for your help on this also.
I'll waive. Thank you.
Roll call vote. Go ahead.
Senator Colmore? Kwan? Sandel?
Aye.
Weiler? Still here.
Aye. Aye.
Chair Bramble?
Aye. That motion passes 4-1.